Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Line Dance Sport podcast. Very pleased to have on Mohammed Shahid on today. Mohammed, I'm trying to get hold of him for quite a while, and we finally nailed him down. Mohammed, thank you for coming on the podcast today. First of all, how are you doing?
Thank you, Terry. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. It's amazing. We've have few busy. I think it's going to be a busy end of the year for us. So the second half is going to be pretty busy. So excited, working hard.
Yeah, I want to come on to the events that you got coming up, but first I want to find out more about the Brave MMA, Brave, brand itself. It's been going around since 7 years, I believe, seven or so,
Yep,
so
since
plus years.
2016 September.
Yeah, and I've been following, as I was saying to you earlier, I've been following the journey for 3, 4 years now, and it's amazing to see the growth of where you and the company have taken it. But can you tell me, why it was started, how it was started, the background behind it a little bit more, please?
So if I think I'll put it a little bit more before Brave, actually, before MMA itself. If you look at the history of Bahrain as a country, we've been so much involved with sports. We consider ourselves as the innovators in sport industry in the region. You think about the first F1 to be in the region was Bahrain. The Bahrain F1 was the first one 15 years back. The first event of Ironman, which is the triathlon event, happened here in Bahrain. The first actual Tour de France team from the region is Bahrain victorious. So we've been involved with sport for a very long time from all the different angles. If you think about hosting the big events to investing in sports properties internationally, and even to be at the governance level. If you look at the finalist for FIFA presidency and the Asian Federation president today is Sheikh Salman bin Ibrahim from Bahrain. So we understand all those different areas of sports, the governance, the hosting of events, and of course, the core of it is the athletes, the talent, the development program, and how they can go and represent their country and themselves and win medals and win championships. I mean, that's the ultimately what the sport and the platforms are always about. So we have a very strong knowledge in sports industry, at sports as a whole, every part of the sport. But then we see mixed martial art, and that's one sport which is young, and we are a little bit romantic to the sport of mixed martial art because of our background. I started my career from mixed martial art as fighting in mixed martial art, and our founder, His Highness Sheikh Khalid, loves mixed martial art, loves combat sports as a whole, and he was one of the biggest reasons of why all this has happened. And I'll get a little bit more into it, but that's where we come from. That's the background. So the goal, what we had with Brave, was never to start a promotion. It was not about let's do a promotion, let's go out there and do what we're doing today. It was always about let's try to reform the industry of mixed martial art. Let's take all the experience of sports that we have and let's bring it to mixed martial art and see how we can reform the industry itself. And when I use the word reform, it does not mean that there's any issues with mixed martial art as an industry today,
Mm.
but it has a lot of holes and a lot of opportunity to grow further. In 35 years, as you know, we've come a long way. We've come a long way in mixed martial art as a sport. But again, it started upside down. We didn't have a grassroots development program. It didn't have an amateur circuit where you can, similar to every other sport that has grown, they had an amateur circuit and then they had a professional circuit. But in mixed martial art, we just ran straight in, went to the pro side of things. There's no governance, there's no amateur body, there's no development program, nothing. It was just best of the best fighters competing professional level, and that's the sport. And a lot of how the model looks like is what we've taken from boxing and WWE, and we mixed it up. And the UFC has done a phenomenal job in what they've done to the sport today. But here we are, 35 years after, the fastest growing sport in the world, the most global sport in the world. And if you look at the sports investment side, we have never seen a turnover like what we've seen in mixed martial art in terms of valuation, in terms of
Yeah.
exit opportunity. All that is existing. And then you look and you think about it and you say, where is it going from here? How do we make it better from where we are to the next, for the next 15, 20, 50 years, and is it going to be sustainable or is it going to end up like the challenges what boxing is going through today as a sport?
Yeah.
And we're seeing that same issues coming into mixed martial art, where we are seeing that it is not about the sport of mixed martial art. It's always about those brands, whether it's the Braves or the UFCs or the Bellators or the One Championship. These are the brands, and they could do whatever they want, even if we don't care about the sport. And eventually, whether I make two athletes compete, or I make two athletes dance, or I make two athletes slap each other, or what if I bring YouTubers and make them compete against each other. All that is fine as long as my brand is making its revenue. My balance sheet is green. That's all that matters. And that's fine. And that's the opportunity we have today. And people are taking advantage of that. And that's how business runs. But from a sports perspective, that's where we sit down as His Highness Sheikh Khalid and myself. For us, how do we not let that happen in a way that we lose the business of sports? And we always say that this mixed martial art today is the event business. And that's why you see all the business way of working. It's like as if running an event. And that's all that matters. But not in the sports business. And to have a sports business, you have to create the grassroots development program. You need to have a governance, and you need to have a sports business model that is about the athletes. And if it's not about the athletes, it doesn't make sense. So we started something called KHK MMA, and KHK Sports is the company that runs a lot of sports development programs, sports initiatives in Bahrain and worldwide. So under that company, we've also had an initiative for KHK MMA where we signed 3 to 4 tiers of athletes. So we signed the guys who are already at the top organizations like UFC. We've signed guys like Khabib Nurmagomedov, Islam Makhachev, who was signed to KHK MMA team. And then we had the second tier, which are athletes already competing at the professional level, didn't have the amateur background, but competing at the professional level, like Eldar Eldarovs and Hamza Kohijis. And then we had the other set of the third tier, which was athletes that are turning professional during their initial debut. Those were James Gallagher's and Shorty Torres and France Malambo. And then we had the amateur, which is the fourth tier, which is definitely the national team. And what did we do with that was how can we create an infrastructure around these athletes, similar to what the football athletes, soccer athletes, NFL, basketball, cricket athletes, what they get as in the sports business. Let's provide that to these athletes and see what the results are. And the amateur team of Bahrain eventually today is the #1 pound-for-pound team in the world. And it's #1 ranking at the IMAF International Mixed Martial Federation World Ranking, and we've had more medals than any sports federation in the country today. For mixed martial alone, the guys who are turning pro, Shorty Torres is competing in Colombia for his title. He was a double division champion in Titan FC. He was a 2-time world champion at IMAF. And today he's competing for Brave Combat Federation title in the coming month. And the same thing with James Gallagher. He's become a superstar for Ireland under Bellator, and France Malambo is doing the same thing in PFL. So those were the guys at that time that was just turning pro. But when you have the resources, you could go 100% focused on your training, and you live a life of an actual athlete. The same thing with the athletes who are also who are competing at professional level, but not at the highest level. And today, Hamza Kohiji is the biggest superstar in the Middle East, and Eldar Eldarov is almost like the godfather of Dagestan. He's super lightweight champion of Brave Combat Federation. I mean, his life has completely changed, and he's the head coach of KHK MMA today. Khabib and Islam, I don't need to tell you a lot about how did their career go. So that showed the case study was a success. Now the question is, okay, that was great for 15 to 20 athletes. What about the 2,000 that's out there? What about the athletes from every corner of the world? We have MMA as the most global sport in the world, but then there are athletes in Pakistan, there's athletes in Oman, there's athletes in Africa, there's athletes all around the world because the sport has grown so much. What about these athletes? How can we create a global ecosystem for mixed martial art that can take a kid without having a shoe to play football and become arguably the biggest player in the world, or the greatest athlete in football? How can we have a Lionel Messi in the sport of mixed martial art? How that if you don't have to, it should not be an English speaking sport. You don't have to speak English. You don't have to be good at trash talking. If you have the talent being the only variable, you could reach wherever you want to be. And that's the only thing that matters. How can we create that structure in mixed martial art? Although I really enjoy the trash talks and the glamour behind this, we all love that. But we're talking about the sports structure, and that does not exist in mixed martial arts. That's when we decided to create an organization that takes all that weight on our shoulders and make that changes. And it won't be easy, because every time you create a promotion, the industry, our own industry of mixed martial art, is not going to recognize what we're trying to do. They will always look and say that, are you competing with the rest of the promotions? there's got to be that basic communication without thinking, without seeing the bigger picture, because it's not easy to see the bigger picture. And to be able to compete in that world and try to educate the mixed martial art world, the sports world, and at the same time work hard to create something that doesn't exist in combat sports, not just mixed martial art, combat sports ever. They've never had a sports business model, whether it's boxing or whether it's wrestling or whether it's MMA today. So to be able to do that, that is going to be something that people will never understand because they've never seen it or heard of it, or we never have a case study to follow. That's why the only way to do that is to be brave. You know, you have to be brave enough to do that, and that's where the name also comes in. It's not necessary to call it brave, because it is a kind of like it's a little code in there where it can be touched with everything. I mean, the athletes have to be brave enough, but there's also a very interesting thing that we always say is that we always talk about hard work and success, hard work, dedication, commitment, discipline, all that thing that's needed to be successful. But we always miss out about guts and bravery. That's one of the key areas as an individual, as an organization, that we all never talk about, because it's not easy to talk about. We never understood it so much. What is that? You know, what is bravery? What is guts? You need to have that to go out there, whatever your talent, skills are, to go and make things happen. That little gap between everything that you have, talent, skills, hard work, dedication, and becoming the best in that cage or in that industry, is that little gap which is called bravery and guts. You need, talk with your chest, work with your chest.
Yeah. It's funny you say brave, because brave also comes quite connection with belief, right? You need to believe that you can actually go out there and be a winner, that you can go be a champion. If you can master that, then you can go and achieve all the goals that you want to achieve, right?
Absolutely, and it's a very hard. It's just like belief, right? Like people will, when you go to this, you talk to people who are good in philosophy, you'll go crazy a little bit about understanding what belief really is, right? And bravery is similar to that, where in the sport of mixed martial art or any kind of sports, you always end up seeing some of these athletes who are amazing in the gym. You know, they might be the greatest you've seen in the gym,
Yeah,
and then they get into the cage. They haven't lost their technique. They haven't lost their focus. It's not about discipline. It's not about hard work. It's not about dedication. They do everything every single day more than anybody else and still have the talent. And it's showcased. It's seen in the gym. But then when they enter the cage or the arena, they're not the same anymore. And people say, what is that? They give a lot of credit to the lights. They always say, oh, it's the big lights. It's that, Sure, yeah, I do understand the idea about lights, but that's something that everybody knows when they're being focused, disciplined, and committed. When they do the hard work, they know that they're going to do something much more bigger than themselves. So they're prepared for it. They know about it. They know the crowd. They want it. But what's that thing that's missing is that, like you said, it's belief. But I think executing belief is through bravery,
Mm. Are you big on sports psychology? Just going off the topic, because it's interesting you said what you just said about people who are different when they're in the ring compared to sparring. Are you big on sports psychology in Brave MMA?
I definitely do think that psychology is everything in sport. I mean, if you don't have the mind of an athlete, I mean, this, and for me, because I learned myself, I would say that I understood myself, my belief in myself, my confidence in myself. Everything came through mixed martial art. Everything came through martial arts, and it didn't come through black belts. It came through actually being able to dodge punches. It was able to defend takedowns. Literally being able to know that, okay, I have this random guy that comes into the gym and I have no idea what his background is, but I know that he has 3 coaches with him that looks like this guy's preparing for something big, looks like a Greek god, and he comes into the gym to do a sparring session with me, but not knowing what I'm going to deal with, but taking that effort and going out there and, okay, let's do a sparring session, and to know that it doesn't matter, because in the end of the day, what are you going to do? You're going to punch me in the face? You're not going to catch me if you're going to punch me in the face. Like Dan Gable, he says that I shoot, I score a point. You shoot, I score a point, So that you have to have that mentality that I'm going to punch you and I'm going to score a point. If you punch me, I'm still going to score a point, because your biggest, my biggest weapon is going to be your skills, and that's something that's crazy, that's how much,
Yeah.
you have to understand that mentality, what an individual will have, and that comes from a lot of hard work, a lot of building that belief in yourself. So I think without that, it's nothing, without that, that's us as human beings, that's us as athletes. You have to have that.
Mohammed, I want to talk more about you as a fighter as well. You were an MMA fighter yourself, right? Um, I,
It was
I,
an MMA competition, so yes, it is an MMA fight. But today, definitely. But today, it's different. Today, when you look at MMA athletes, unbelievable. I mean, you're looking at when you look at the likes of Shorty Torres, Muhammad Makaevs. I mean, these guys are doing pro debut, and at the age of 20, 21, you're seeing them at the highest level. They've had already 29, 30 fights. We have Ramzan Gitinov, one of our athletes, who's pound for pound number one athlete in junior and senior. The highest, let's say, achiever in IMAF. Nobody's gonna, I think, for a long time break his records of the amount of medals he's won. But he's still very young and already had his 30, 35 fights. So those
wow.
guys, the MMA athletes that you see today are completely different. So sometimes when I look at it and I look at my career and I look back and I say that I was competing in MMA. That's the only reason I'm an MMA fighter. I mean, you get what I mean. But but we were trying to learn what we could, and thanks to internet, we got as much information as we could gather and train. And every time we're looking at what's happening in the mixed martial art, it was, let's say, evolving at a very fast pace. So we had to, at my times, I was training, eating, sleeping, teaching, taking classes, and learning. And learning was so important because uh, you had to catch up what's going on. Why is the sambo guys coming in? What's sambo all about? What's leg locks all about? So you had to keep evolving. Jiu-jitsu was evolving at a fast pace. Wrestling was evolving at a fast pace. So think about MMA that has all of this martial arts, how fast that was
Yeah.
evolving. So it was tough. It was tough. So we had to do a lot of self-learning. But I
The
think
internet
that's
was
what.
your best friend. Was your internet your best friend during that time?
Oh yes, my
Really?
everything. Internet was my teacher, coach, all of that. So and that's the beauty, right? I mean, that's why we say that mixed martial art was born at the internet time, and
Yeah.
they complemented each other so much because the
Mm.
only time we knew about martial arts as that, in a way that we have to not be romantic to our traditional martial arts and learn different other martial arts and be open-minded, was from a media figure called Bruce Lee, right? And if Bruce Lee wasn't a Hollywood actor,
Yeah.
whatever he said, nobody would hear about it. You know what I mean? So
True.
thankfully, he was a Hollywood actor and he said what he said, and people started opening their minds up. But at the same time, when it comes to internet, that's what it did for mixed martial art, where it really started answering those questions really quickly. So you could sit down and say that I'm a Taekwondo black belt, and trust me, guys, I could be a student and ask my coach, Taekwondo is great. You're a black belt in Taekwondo. But what do you think if a wrestler comes and takes down? And he's going to be like, oh, if he comes and show me a takedown. They show you, they say, okay, now come in slow motion. And then he's going to kick your head and say that this is what we're going to do, right? And but you really believe that because that's your coach telling you.
Yeah.
But then when you have internet, I don't need anybody to tell me. I'm seeing facts. I'm seeing
Mm.
what's happening when a Muay Thai athlete competes with Taekwondo athletes. I'm seeing what happens to a striker when a wrestler comes in and takes him down. We see what jiu-jitsu athletes can do when somebody's on the floor, regardless of the weight at that time, at least. And then everybody had to
Mm.
learn everything. So yeah, internet was so important, not just for us, as I think our generation who were starting in the early days of mixed martial art, and to learn and get as much information and what's going on in the mixed martial art world, but also for the industry of mixed martial art. I think internet was crucial. I think that was the one that actually, if it wasn't for internet, I don't think we would be where we are. Because even till today, half of the people don't really understand what mixed martial art is. When we
Yeah.
talk to them, they
Yeah.
look at it
Yeah.
like it's hard to understand because it looks very, very brutal and violent. But then you're like, yeah, it's because you don't understand what's going on. Because for you, in your mind, that's chaotic. In my mind, I'm compartmentalizing cage control, grappling, wrestling, striking, setting up takedown for a strike. In my head, it's there in pieces. So that's the difference, I guess.
I'm really interested just about yourself. Just one last question, because the infrastructure wasn't there when you were starting out. All you were learning was on YouTube. Why did you get involved in MMA? What was it that attracted you to a sport like that?
Um, I think it's a lot of things. I mean, it's a snowball effect. when I was really young. The Jackie Chans and the Van Dams and the Jet Lis were
Yeah,
always an
yeah, of
inspiration,
course.
right?
Yeah,
You watch
yeah.
them, you love them, and that's going to be my type of movies. It's always going to be martial art movies. And along with that, I mean, we loved, you never thought that was a sport. You always wanted to do that because that was something that made you feel like that's the kind of human being I want to become. I want to become the Jackie Chan in Defender. I want to become the Jet Li in their movies. So those characters are for us somehow a more superior human being
Mm,
than the normal civilians, let's say. So there's different criteria when it comes to a martial arts master, and that's the movies that showed us that. And we're like, oh, I want to be that. They're humble. They don't fight with guys. They say sorry, and then they knock them out. You always have this amazing personalities that you wish you
yeah,
want to
yeah,
become,
that's true.
and that's there in your subconscious mind. But for me, I was always into martial arts, so I really loved the movies. But that inspiration made me train martial arts, all different martial arts. I've done taekwondos to Muay Thais to Kalari Paiti from India, uh, which also allowed me when I got the internet. I was really interested in learning every martial art that exists out there. What is Kung Fu Sanda, what is Silat, what is Sambo. So for me, I think I discovered Sambo way earlier than a lot of people have been. At that time, they didn't understand Sambo so much. And now, because of Khabibs and Islams and the
Yeah.
Dagestani fighters, they understand Sambo better. But I was following that from a very long time to because they had something that was more unique than Jiu-Jitsu. Jiu-Jitsu had it too, but if you look at Sambo, they were doing much more of leg locks than the basic Jiu-Jitsu that was being taught around. So for me, that was a thing, was the interest and the passion for mixed martial art. And one fine day, I had a coach, Ashraf Ali, and I will never forget this because I don't know why, but one day in one of the classes, he was a taekwondo coach, my taekwondo coach. But one of the days, he asked in the class, uh, and when we finished the class, he said, "Who wants to make this a career?" And I was like, can you make it a career? I never knew that we could make this into a career. I
Mm,
was thinking of being a footballer. That was a goal. That's what we love. That's the career because we see that. Well, how can you make a career out of this? I've never seen a taekwondo athlete. Like it doesn't matter. He's like, no. I mean, I'm talking martial arts. I was like, can you make it a career? He's like, yeah, sure. Who wants to do it? And I raised my hand. I was the only one raising my hands. I was 13 at that time, but that was that. That was I don't know why did he ask that question in the class, but nothing happened about it. We never discussed further about how to make it a career or how does this work or any of those. But that question changed everything for me. I came back and I was like, I asked my brothers, do you know that we can make a career out of this? And
mm,
I want to know how. And that's when I kept searching about how do you become a professional athlete with martial arts, and boom, there you go, pops up the K1s and the UFC and the Pride fights, and that's when I was like, wow, this is a real thing, it does exist.
mm.
I was like, let's go all in, and yeah, and I made that decision. I had to drop out of high school, and I was like, that's it. I want to go. If I'm going all in, I'm going to go all in. There's a lot of people that say that no, you could do both together. I couldn't. I couldn't multitask. I was not that smart like everybody else. I had to do one thing at a time and be 100% into it. And that was martial arts for me. So I left everything, took a gamble, went all in, ended up taking some classes. My coach traveled, so he had his classes in Bahrain, which I started taking taekwondo classes, and then had to travel around. So it was just a martial arts life of traveling to Thailand and fighting in Thailand. Meanwhile, coming back and trying to reach out to as many promoters and promotions as possible. Doing whatever it takes to understand. And I think that also helped me understand the mixed martial art or the martial art industry, understand different federations like WACO, IFMA, the Muay Thai Federation, Kickboxing Federation, the Wrestling Federations. So I was
Mm.
literally searching day in and day out. There was nobody to teach you, so you had to do 24/7 research. And yeah, so from there it started, and I went and I fought in Thailand, and that was my first reality check where I came to know that what professional fighting really is
Yeah.
and what the life of a fighter looks like. So I uh, I was in Thailand. I went to Koh Samui and at WNC gym, and I went there. I told the coach I want to get a fight, and he's like, "Yeah, sure. You want to get a fight? First train here, then we get a fight." And then I kept. I was training. All I did, but I didn't have that kind of financial backing to be able to survive for long. So I had to have a protein shake and a Nutella was my breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Yeah, you get sick. You wake up, you still train, and But good thing that was the time I lost my 20 kgs that I never thought I should be, and I could lose that kind of weight. And
20 kg. Wow.
yeah, it was nuts. Not of course not in a healthy way. And there's some clips on YouTube of me wrapping hands in Thailand, and it looks like uh, you don't even recognize that's me. It's just crazy times when I was in Thailand. But I had to live off my breakfast, lunch, and dinner was protein shake, and then just to get that carbs, I used to have Nutella scoops, in between. And if I could get buy bread, that's great because I had to survive for months. And then I started fighting, and my first fight was uh, it's crazy. I mean, they put you in a pickup and they drive you, and you're just sitting in a pickup and you're going. You have no idea where you're heading to, and and it was my first travel as well. My first travel outside of Bahrain. I mean, definitely I've gone to India before, but not outside of India and Bahrain. So it was my first travel to Thailand. Nobody I know of. It's just crazy, and they're putting me in a pickup at night, and we're just traveling for hours, and then we reach this place where there's a bunch of people drinking, screaming, gambling, and they put me in this room, and they're like, "Okay, prepare him." They prepared me for what? Slaughter? I mean, like they were like, yeah, putting this, they're like, prepare him, and they're putting this oil on me, and they're just massaging me with the oil, and then they just put the flour on my neck and my head and everywhere else, and put this. So literally, it was like a chicken going to get slaughtered, right? And
Wow.
so I was just massaging, I was just going with the flow. They're doing everything, and they're speaking Thai. I don't understand it, and they put me next to the ring on a seat, and I'm sitting there, all done. They prepared me for everything, and I'm just sitting there, and I look on to the side. There's another guy prepared like me, sat next to me. I look at him and I'm like, I gotta break the ice or build a rapport here, because I feel like I know what I'm doing. So I look at my smile. He looks at me and he doesn't, he has his face where it's like game face on. I'm like, okay, doesn't look like anybody wants to interact here. And then I realized that was my opponent they were putting next to me. So he's gonna. And then a Dutch guy comes in and he holds me while I'm climbing to getting into the ring, and everybody's screaming, and this Dutch guy holds me and he's drunk, and he's like, "I'll give you 10,000 baht if you win. I'll give you." I said, "Sure, man. I really would like to use that." And then I get inside the cage, and it was crazy, and that I fought, I won, I knocked the guy out in the first round, and this guy comes in, gives me the 10,000 baht, put in my mouth. I'm biting it because I have gloves. I cannot hold the money. I'm biting it, and they're like, "Okay, done. Get out." I was like, like, what's going on? I mean, like, it was crazy experience. And then I finished the fight. I got back to my gym. I was sleeping in the gym, and then I had to take a flight the next day. So I went. I mean, it was the same day after midnight. So I went straight to the airport, and I'm sitting in the flight, and I still have those tapes from the hand wraps on my hand. And when you rip it off, there's still tapes. I didn't have time. I had to quickly head to the airport. And I was there, and I was sitting in the flight, and I had this fear of flying because that was my first flight, right? To out a long flight. So I had this fear of flying since a young age. But while I was sitting there and flying back to Bahrain, I just realized I have no more fear. I have no more fear of flying. I just went away because what I've experienced right now is that since then, I always tell people that once in your life, you should try to take that walk into a cage or a ring and compete. Not to become a professional fighter. It doesn't have to be any of those. Just an experience, because that's one day you will really understand yourself. Because when you walk in, you want to run away. You want to cry. You're excited that you're making it. You're in another country. You're going to change your life. You're going to live your dream. The world is watching you. Excitement, anxiety, fear, happiness, all of them at one time. We are used to dealing with one emotion at a time in our lives. And everybody might be good at that. When you have 70 emotions at the same time, not to deal with it, but you better be able to be the orchestra and balance them the right way. I need a little bit of fear. No fear makes me stupid. Excitement is good, but not overexcitement. Happiness, all the feelings, you're controlling it into a different ratio, and you walk that walk, and you just balance yourself, and you get inside, and you're sitting outside your body and managing that fear and that excitement and trying to get the best output from your mind and your body as possible. And I can't think
It's a
of
magic feeling.
anything else that could make you understand yourself as much as that experience of being a fighter. And that was for me in my mentality that forget about being an, making this a career. I want to do this without, even if I don't get paid a day, if I have to pay for it, I want to do this for the rest of my life. That changed everything in me.
Do you know what? I've got to say, I've got to commend you on your first fight, first win, first round knockout. I remember when I first fought, I was nervous. I was like fighting, punching throws like this. So you done really well in terms of that aspect, man. You smashed it. But what did your family say about you going away and doing all this as well?
Oh yeah, I mean when you're my family actually are from India and they came to Bahrain. And for me, I was born and brought up in Bahrain. So for me, we are Bahrainis. We live that life of the Middle East culture, the mentality of the opportunities that we have in this region. But still, you never lose that blood in you. It's always going to be there. So when you drop out of high school for no reason and you tell them that it's because I want to become a martial artist and make this your career, it's a crime. It's actually a crime. I've had relatives from India actually call me and cry on the phone and say, "Why are you doing this? Why did you make this decision? What happened to you? So it's everything fine. Your mind is fine." And they're crying on the phone, and I have no idea who that person is. I've never heard of this relative in my life. Just because they say that they are my relative, that's how I know. But they're really crying. I mean, I'm like, how serious is this? Like not having to complete your education. But yeah, that's why, and that's immediately when I went to Facebook and I changed my education into my martial arts school is my education. And I'm like, because what is education if I didn't understand what discipline, hard work, dedication, and commitment is from that institution? And all that I learned about hard work, dedication, focus, and discipline is from martial arts, and that's what taught me everything. So yeah, it was tough. Nobody really did believe what was going to happen, and I don't blame anybody because we're not coming from a region where mixed martial art is something that you could become. If I say I want to become a footballer, sure, but still they would be like, okay, but what if you break your leg tomorrow? And always that question is there in your head. And you're like, yeah, but a sport that they never heard of, mixed martial art, is never going to get you anywhere. It was tough, but that for me, I always take the positive. And I wouldn't say that, oh, I didn't have any support. I was glad that I didn't have any support. So I had to do it myself. And I had to do all this journey myself. I wouldn't have been where I am today or learn as much as I could learn if I had all of those. And I say that that's a blessing for me that nothing existed. And I had to do all of it individually. It also gave me a lot of self-belief and self-confidence and completely isolate myself from everything that's around in my life. Since the age of 17, I don't have any more friends. I've left everybody that I know from school and everywhere else because my life is not comparable to anybody else. I don't have anything relatable to talk to them. We're not talking about college. We're not talking about work, getting a job somewhere. None of that matters. And I don't want to spend that 1-2 hours talking about something that does not matter to me. That 1 hour is for me to spend on the internet and watch 20 videos, and that's more important for me. And I spend every second and every the only regret I have is that I missed out a lot of football matches, which is something I really love. But yeah, I had to sleep earlier. Couldn't have pizzas and watch Champions League at night with my brothers. So that's the only thing maybe I feel a little bit bad about. But other than that, it was all a learning process. So yeah, it was tough from the family perspective. Everybody that's around you, and I had to isolate myself a little bit from my family as well. As soon as I opened up a gym, I started living in my gym. So we had a kitchen in the gym. So I started sleeping in the kitchen. That was my office. That was my bedroom. And that was everything for me. So I had to do that because I don't even want a second of someone saying, at least try to think of doing a course, online, nothing. It has to be 100%. I'm going to be changing the world with mixed martial art. And that's it. That's the only thing that should be in my head 24/7. And so yeah, so it was a good thing, I would say.
You're a man that goes in 100%. It sounds like all in or nothing, right? All in or nothing,
Absolutely,
which is right.
absolutely.
I want to talk about the upcoming events that you got coming on. Going back to Brave CF, you've got 73 event coming up in Colombia. Tell me about the event, man. What's going on? You got bantamweight title
It,
put on there.
It's yeah. First of all, it's very exciting for us to go back to Colombia. I mean, whenever we started with Brave. September 23rd, 2016 was when we launched Brave as an organization, and we did two events in 2016 and 2017. We started traveling, and we wanted to globalize, and that was one of the key visions of His Highness. Is Brave is going to be not an MMA promotion. It is going to be a vision. It is going to be a national project to every country it goes to. So you can't just go to a country and do an event and say that, hey, I've done an event in a new country. Sure, today we have traveled more than any other organization that's out there, and our event in
Yeah.
France is going to make us 29 countries and 5 continents. But that's nice to say because it is an achievement. But at the same time, I'm more happy to say the impact what we have created in each country that we go to. And that is key for us. So when we went to Colombia, nobody has been traveling to this part of the world. So they don't, the international organizations don't want to go to Colombia for several reasons. Every organization looks at their balance sheet. So whenever they go to a country, it's about, is it a good market? Is it, do we have everything that we have there? Do we have a great television deal? Can I sell tickets? Do I have athletes that can bring ticket sales for me, sponsorship for me? And for us, it was the other way around. For us, it was about what this organization could become that will change develop the sport of mixed martial art in the world, but also in the countries that we go to. So we went to Colombia in it was Bucaramanga, which was our first event in Colombia, and then we went to Bogota. And for us, it's a third time. So to be able to be consistent in hosting events, that's something special for us because the COVID time, 2020 to 2022, it was a crazy time. We had to restrict a lot of travels into American continent for sure. It was very difficult. So to go back there, it's really exciting. But to go back there and see the development of what we've set the seeds in 2017 or 18, we're seeing the fruit now when they have combined to come together and created the first Pan-American Championship. So this is going to be the first Pan-American Championship that happened in that part of the world. Brave it's going to be an International Combat Week. The second International Combat Week that we are hosting this year. We had Serbia with the World Championship, and now with the Pan American Championship. And there's no other way when you have such an amazing impact with Pan American Championship happening, return to Colombia, all of that. We had to give them a main event that was fit to the occasion, let's say. And there was no better way to do that than bringing two of the best bantamweights in the world to compete against each other. Everything in that fight is a story. If you are a person who loves martial arts and forget about stories, it's about martial arts, styles makes fights, then you do have that. You have a guy who is short, moving in, fighting from the inside, great wrestler. And then you have a guy who's great striker, long, uses elbows, knees, and punches, and keeps a distance. So it's literally two different opposite styles that's going to compete against each other. Two of them at the highest level. If you are a fan of International Mixed Martial Arts Federation Development Program, then this is a real case study of what that has brought to the professional side when you have two-time world champion. The first ever two-time world champion of IMMAF is Shorty Torres. Two-division champion in Titan FC. He's fought at UFC. He's today competing, gone through ups and downs. He's gone through emotional issues. He's had been very vocal and honest about his mental health, and he's back to show that he is one of the best bantamweights in the world. We knew he was one of the best athletes in the world at flyweight or bantamweight when we saw him in the amateur scene, and we signed him to KHK MMA team at that time with the likes of Khabib and Islam. He was training with Khabib, Islam, Eldar, Hamza Koiji while he was an amateur. So his experience from that time onwards, it's been amazing. And you saw the results of him winning. But of course, he's had some tragedies that happened in his life with his father passing away. And he had to deal with all that emotions, still go travel around the world and compete. It was tough for him. He did take a layoff to come back, and now he's back and he's fighting for the title. And for him, he wants to really show, because he's in his prime at this stage, He's 30 years old, in his prime. This is the best position for him to become a world champion, change his career, and show the world that he's the number one. But on the other hand, you have Nkosi, who is that African champion, national champion, the number one pound for pound African fighter ranked by IMMAF. But this kid is something special, right? I mean, if you look at him, he has that special element because he started fighting, or sorry, he knew what mixed martial art was or heard of mixed martial art in 2016 because he did his first mixed martial art amateur fight. That's how he knows what mixed martial art is. Again, he heard of it because he's competing, but he didn't know much about it. So even in his first fight, he even forgot that he has to wear shin pads and groin cup because he didn't know that was part of the rules. He didn't know the rules. He didn't know anything. So, but in 2016, 2018, he became African champion. He became the pound for pound number one ranked African fighter in IMAF. All that in just 2 years. So the evolution he's had was unbelievable. But he's also one of those, let's say, the poster boys of Brave, because his pro career started with Brave. He's the only athlete in Brave whose pro career started with Brave. He didn't fight anywhere else, and he's all the way, started with Brave and here fighting for the title as a Brave fighter all his life. His relationship with Brave, and that's what I say. Brave was born in 2016. He came to know what mixed martial arts was in 2016. Yeah. He decided to make MMA his full-time career when he traveled for representing his country to the Brave International Combat Week in Bahrain. So when he saw the lights, he saw the magnitude of how big this show is, how big this event is, he decided this is what I want to do. So he made his decision to become a full-time athlete in Bahrain at Brave International Combat Week, signed his first pro contract with Brave, and he had a fight in South Africa where he got back with his coach because he was fighting South Africa and his coach had another athlete in South African event and he didn't have a corner man. So that coach cornered him. And since then, he's with him till now and they've been making history together. So every part of his life in the martial arts journey, he had something to do with Brave, So, and traveled, imagine a kid from South Africa who is been in one of the craziest localities, let's say, growing up, and never thought that he would be traveling around the world. And he always wanted to travel around the world. And here he is traveling around the world with martial arts. And I think he's fought in Indonesia, he's fought in Bahrain, now he's fighting in Colombia, he's fought in South Africa, his home country as well. So he's living his life, and he's a full-time athlete. And I think that the talent that he has from 2016 to today, to become what he's become and become a title contender, it's unbelievable, and for him, this is that main event that is important for IMMAF. This is a main event that is important for showing the journey of what the structure of amateur to pro that we have been building with Brave CF and International Mixed Martial Federation. This is a true case study of what that can do. But at the same time, for these fighters, whoever wins this fight is going to be considered, for me, the best bantamweight in the world. I mean, these guys are two high-quality fighters. You could talk about different ways of why this fight could go either ways, whether it's the experience of Shorty Torres, whether it's his in-fighting style, or whether it's his superior wrestling. But on the other hand, you can also talk about how Nkosi can win because he is so good at starting the fights and starting the rounds at the top level. I mean, he's one of those guys who comes into the cage and you can see that energy in him, that he sucks the energy from everyone around him and he goes in and he throws it on his opponent. I mean, you take him down, he's going to throw elbows and knees. Whatever you do, he's going to be hitting you. So it is an interesting fight for me personally. As a fan, I love to watch this fight. This is one of those fights for me that I have no idea what's going to happen. Like I said, I could say 20 things for why Shorty would win or could win and can win, and the same thing with Nkosi, and it's about what happens when they both combine together and whose game plan works better. That's the only way this fight will be decided. But that's the only way it should be decided for a World Championship title.
50-50 fight. That event is on the 12th of August. How do people in the UK view the event?
DAZN. You can watch it on DAZN. Okay. We'll be live on DAZN. Yeah.
And how about, you got an event in France as well, I believe?
September 7th, yes.
That's September 7th. Have you got the card finalized for that one?
The cards are we will be announcing the fights very soon. We will be announcing the fights very soon, but we've already, the most important key for us for the September event was make the event in France, give that platform to all the French fighters that's been competing with us for the past 7 years, You have the likes of Axel Sola, who's one of the biggest prospects from France. I mean, he must be the best amateur athlete in the history of France till date. So he's been IMAF world champion, European champion, pound number one athlete in IMAF world ranking. So all of that, he's achieved so much in his career. Became a professional fighter, and he, ended up winning every fight of his easy. I mean, he's showed that he's at a different level, because that's a challenge, right? When you had fought 25 fights at the amateur level without being able to match make and choose your opponent, you're just competing against the best. It's a tournament at the amateur level, so you just walk in and fight 2 to 3 fights a day. Every single day you're going back to back fighting. There's no question about, should I take the fight? Should I think about it? Do I have time to prepare for him, learn his strategies? None of that. You're going to go, believe in yourself, and go and compete. So when you do that for 25 fights, and then you're turning pro, a lot of people are going to look at you and you're going to say that, okay, that's an 0-0 guy doing his pro debut. No, this guy is better than most of the 10-0s at the professional level, because you come to the structure, and this structure is so, I mean, today everybody's realizing how crazy the structure is that we've built with IMAF and Brave together, of creating this global ecosystem. But that's Axel Sola, I mean, he showcased that every person, he's now 6-0, if I'm not mistaken. But at 6-0, he's been walking through his opponents, and you haven't seen a challenge for him. So for him to come back and fight in his home country through Brave, that's important. Giannis, Elias, two of the top guys who fought in Brave in Bahrain, in Brave 72 and 72, if I'm not mistaken, to literally fly here, compete, because they want to get book their place in France, to compete in France. So I've made it very clear to them, you guys fight in Bahrain, you win, not just win. There's a lot of French fighters who wants that slot to be in that fight card. So you can't just win. You have to win in a special fashion, and Elias and Giannis, the two of these guys, showcase that, they put on a show in Bahrain. And I had no choice but to sign these guys to fight in France. They earned it. So when you have Giannis fighting, so that's all confirmed. Giannis is fighting, Elias is fighting, Axel Sola will be competing in France event. And most importantly, Amin Ayoub, the comeback of Amin Ayoub. I mean, that is the craziest thing. I think this guy is one of the Karim Benzema's of France for sure. I mean, he's that guy who humble person, loyal individual. He knows everything around him that's happening in the industry of mixed martial art. He knows where he's going in his MMA career. Young, competed, knows his fan base, knows his market. He's a very intelligent kid. I mean, that's similar to what you see in Muhammad Mokaev. I mean, he's one of those individuals who's super intelligent, not just as an athlete, but also understands the industry so well, understands what he should be doing. So Amin Ayoub is one of those kids, I mean, I think he's going to be a big name for France, and winning this fight in his home city, Nantes. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, that's why we made the event in Nantes. We worked with the handball team, HBC Nantes, who's worked together with us in supporting and bringing handball and mixed martial art together. Their handball team is one of the best handball teams in Europe. So they are one of those Barcelonas of handball. So it's great to connect with another sport and bring mixed martial art to France in a different eyesight. But at the same time, we didn't want Paris. Instead of that, we chose Nantes, because when we have the likes of two champions, Abdul Gimov and Amin Ayoub, two of these guys that became Brave champions, former champions of Brave, were both from Nantes. So if we had to go somewhere, it has to be the city where these champions were born. For the first time, Amin gets to fight. He's fought in France before, never fought in a city. So for us, it's a privilege to be able to give him that opportunity, that platform, so that his friends and family, they all can come and support him and see him fight in the main event.
So one thing I noticed about you is you're big on going to different territories, and that's great to hear. There's some brands just stay in one area and look to, grow in that, but you're going in different areas where you wouldn't have gained. Looking at that, you're going into India, and I believe you have some breaking news about your new TV deal in India. Do you mind explaining more about that as well, please?
Absolutely. No, India is amazing. Like, mark my words, Terry. I keep saying this. A lot of people don't understand it. I keep telling them that India is going to be one of the biggest market for mixed martial art. A lot of people, because mixed martial art is an American sport born in USA. So a lot of people think that that's the industry. and they don't really understand the rest of the world. When they hear me say that India is going to be the biggest mixed martial market, they don't get it, and rightfully so. They can't get it because you've seen promotions like One Championships and UFCs. They've been talking about getting into India. They've taken athletes, they've signed athletes, they've done everything that's around it, TV deals and signing athletes, thinking that okay, one day we will get the market. It's one of those mentalities MMA promotions have, that I'm not going to support an athlete until he can provide me value. We're the other way around. We are looking at how can we take a talent and make him a superstar without having to see what value he can bring for me. So that's why we have a Swedish fighter from Chechenian origin competing in the main event of an event in India. And you look and say, that doesn't make a business sense. Why do you have a Swedish fighter from Chechenian origin fighting in the main event of India? Yeah, don't worry about it today. Don't worry about this individual sending me tickets. But believe me, when he becomes Gamza Chimaev, you will notice what India has done for him, how he became in 5 fights, 6 fights, the superstar that he is today. Why do you have a Filipino fighter fighting in the main event in Ireland against a South African fighter? I mean, these are the different mixes that makes it more about the athletes, that makes it more about the development than the business side of things. And the business will flow into it because the reason when 2016, when UFC also said that they want to come into India, they're going to do a reality show, nothing happened. Other promotions said that they're going to be entering India, nothing happened. But then Brave, since 2017, has been going to India every single year, 17, 18, 19. If you look at the impact of Brave in India, you see the development of athletes. We've taken athletes and made them compete internationally. We've hosted events on ground in India. We worked very closely with the national MMA federations in India. And the growth of India today is unbelievable. People don't realize there's over 40 plus promotions within India. They don't believe that 44% of the viewership in India are from female side. They don't believe that there's events that are filling up 15 to 20,000 seats. They don't believe that in India you have over 700 to 800 different MMA gyms. They don't believe that in India. It's unbelievable how the market has grown. And the funny thing is, India hasn't realized it themselves as well, to be honest. They haven't realized it themselves that you have a gold mine lying down there. And this wouldn't have happened if someone like us didn't take that, that weight on the shoulder, like I was saying, of why we travel around the world. So we've been in India for a very long time. We've been working with India, and you see the likes of, and I give them one example. You don't see sports movies in India unless it's about Olympic medalist. Somebody has won Olympic medal. Something big has to happen at the national level, and it has to be a national interest before they make a movie about it. But then you have 4 or 5 different movies on mixed martial art, even though they haven't recognized mixed martial art in the country. So that shows the organic growth of mixed martial art, to have Bollywood movies get involved with it. You have Bollywood stars that are endorsing MMA for it's not an advertising thing. They just endorse MMA. They go and visit MMA because there's an MMA interest in the region. So India is ready. It's ripe. It's ready for mixed martial art, the big game of mixed martial art. And we have been preparing India for a long time. We didn't want to go and say, okay, you know what, we wait for India to be ready. It's not going to happen. You have to go there and work around it. So we put the work in, working with the federation, supporting the federation. We've done a lot of amateur events with the Indian Federation and Bahrain federations. We've done events on ground. We've worked with their athletes. We've built a strong foundation in India. And one of the results of this foundation is also our partnership, which we had with MTV, where we had the likes of Alia Bhatt and Ranveer Singh, who was promoting Brave at that time. But when you see even the latest MMA movies like Liger, if I'm not mistaken, there was a recent MMA movie called Liger. That was the last MMA movie that came out in India. And if you look at their world title belt, it's the Brave belt that they've been using.
Wow.
Yes. So you'll see the impact of within the roots of India, from athletes, from the development program that these athletes are getting. Like we just signed with the biggest prospect of amateur MMA in India is Mahmood Khan, who's the only gold medalist from India, who's the only two-time medalist in MMA ever in Indian history. So, and he was a cab driver, and today he is. You can imagine, he was cab driver taking care of his family because his father used to have alcohol problems and is still having. So he has to take care of everything. He had to get his sister married, very young age. Started working 2 to 3 different jobs, but his main job where he was getting the best pay was as a cab driver. So you can imagine the other jobs he was going through. And then here he is getting this opportunity, living in Bahrain, training with the biggest team in the world, having the largest camp that he's going to be a part of. You know, it's amazing what we've been doing with India in the last 7 years. And our relationship with India started before Brave, actually. So we started doing development programs with India since 2015. We've done amateur tryouts with the national team of India and national team of Bahrain. We've made competitions in Bangalore and in Bahrain. Only at the COVID time, 2022, we've been a little bit silent with India. But as soon as 2022 was done, we've done the Road to Brave show in Bangalore, and we're back in it. And this partnership that we signed, before this partnership, we've signed 2 months back a partnership with MX Player, the largest streaming platform in the world. It is unbelievable. MX Player is the largest streaming platform that's being downloaded after YouTube and Netflix. They have 300 million users, and that's the audience we're going to be reaching to. So all these Indian fighters who are competing in Brave and that are traveling around the world with Brave today does not have to worry about their national growth anymore, because you have the likes of MX Player. But today we've just officially announced, I think the announcement just happened as we're talking, is with Geo. I mean, if anybody knows the history of Reliance and Geo in what they have been doing for sports, whether it's IPL or whether it's every other different sports, I mean, they've been one of the biggest players in developing sports in India, and a lot to do with why their platform is free to, it's free for everybody who's Geo users. They have free content. So the growth of sports is what matters to them. And they're reaching over to 400 million users themselves. And they're one of the largest multimedia companies in the world. At the same time, they are also one of the biggest supporters for sports. So for us, we built that largest media relationship in India today with Geo and MX Player both with us now. So we have the reach of our content to unbelievable 700 million users and audience that can have access to Brave content. So this is
huge.
It's mental.
That's huge. Wow.
So for us, I feel like 2024 is going to be a massive change of how MMA is going to be looked at in India. And I think it is going to be the second biggest sport, keeping all the sport fund side apart, talking business. It is going to be the largest sports investment opportunity after IPL that you're going to see in India. And it's not about the future, it's next year. So you're going to see that happen next year. In 2024, our last final icing on the cake was to have the right partners on board. So today, when you look at the growth of MMA Federation of India, you look at the growth of talents in India, the scouting programs that is put together, the development programs that we're signing with athletes, and the organic growth of the sport in the within the sports fan, and having the right media partners. Everything is set. It is going to be something that is, for me, I wouldn't say that it's going to be as big as cricket. It's definitely going to be the second biggest sport in India. And it's not because MMA is the second biggest sport. We're going to create a platform and a business model for India that is going to be allowing the biggest sports investors to be involved with something they've never seen with ISLs or with any other leagues in India. It's going to be something unique.
That's a unique opportunity. I've got to ask you about Mahmood Khan. What's the future for this young fighter? Where do you see him going?
It's a win-win regardless, I always say, because you have the opportunity. You're here in Bahrain. You're training with the best in the world. We've seen the same thing happen with a lot of athletes. I mean, it's not just Mahmood Khan. He can look and say, I can become Hamza Kohiji. I can become Abbas Khan. I can become Mohammed Makayev. Because there's a lot of Mohammed Makayev was scouted. I would say that His Highness actually saw him competing and saw his video of him training when he was 14 years old. And that's when he would tell that story all the time, that he would have a message on his comment section in his Instagram post where someone tags Shahid the Hawk, and he doesn't know who are these two guys anyways, someone is just tagging somebody else on his comments. And he's 14-year-old, so he's reading on his comments, and he clicks and checks who this person is, and he finds out this is the son of the king of Bahrain. He's the prince of Bahrain, and he's like, wow, and he's like, what's going on? But that's also shows a lot about why Brave and why we always say that we cannot thank enough I'm not talking as Brave president or a CEO, but I'm talking about me as an MMA lover and a guy who struggled and who decided to do everything to change MMA and make that the legacy of my life. From that perspective, I cannot thank enough and be happy for having a leader for mixed martial art like His Highness Sheikh Khalid, because you always want someone to carry the sport, and you wish someone comes into this industry and changes the sport, but you can't do that because running this sport is all about business, and if you don't think about business
Mm.
first, you won't be able to change the sport 100%. But when you have a person like His Highness Sheikh Khalid, where he's like, let's change the sport, and you see that result of someone taking that risk, someone taking that challenges and taking all that weight on their shoulders and leading the sport to make something bigger happen. Whether you look at the history of athletes or whether you look at what we as a promotion is doing for the International Mixed Martial Federation or for anything else, if you see the story of the International Federation of MMA, they were working with UFC Fight Week till 2017, and nobody even knew what it was at that time because they were in one corner of the in Vegas that nobody knew what was going on. But then when we got them to 2017 to Bahrain, we hosted the World Championship. It was the biggest World Championship you will see in any combat sports. I mean, you look at I'm talking about the glamour side of things in terms of how we made it look like. We made it look like as if a World Cup is happening in Bahrain. And that empowered the federation's image, that empowered, we were just talking about Nkosi, who changed his mindset to become a fighter because he saw this, cars in the airport, police escorts taking them to venues, mental shows and expos going on around the stadiums.
Yeah.
So it was something where they felt like this is what MMA standard should be. We shouldn't be putting them in a conference hall and just doing world championships. That doesn't make it look like a world championship. So we've changed that in 17, 18, and 19 and 20. Then the COVID hit, of course, but then in 22 we've made the first ever MMA Super Cup, which was the first time in the history of International Federation of MMA where the national federations could sit and say MMA is bringing money back to the national federations. So the national federations were actually getting paid, and they didn't have to spend a dime from their pocket because everyone was flown, take the tickets, their teams, their stay, everything was taken care of by the event itself. So they just had to bring their best team, because when you do a world championship, I'll tell you what was a key point in that. When you do a world championship, you want to become a fighter, you have to register, right? If you don't have the registration fee to sign in to represent your country, maybe you won't be able to compete. So you always have the excuse that there are a lot of top talents that are not being able to compete because they didn't have the financial means to do it. There's only few countries like Bahrain and few others that have the government giving that kind of support and backing to get the athletes the best to go. Otherwise, a lot of countries, the athletes have to pay the registration fee. So when we did the MMA Super Cup, we said, no more excuses. We're taking the top 6 countries in the world, make them compete in the tournament format, first team versus team format, where they'll be wearing their team jerseys and competing, just like what you see in football or anywhere else. But at the same time, you can pick your best athletes to come here because you don't have a registration fee. All your expenses from flight to here, hotel, everything will be taken care of. And if you become first, second, or third, you'll have a prize money that you can take it back to your country and use it for the development of the sport, because that is key for us. If you don't get financial gains for the development of the sport in your countries from an international organization, it is going to be challenging, and we all struggle with that. So we're making so many different changes, and everything was a long-term vision of His Highness, and that's where when we see these individuals as athletes changing their lives, a lot of people don't see them. Look at Abbas Khan, who came to Bahrain from Pakistan, was collecting garbage in the country, and ended up in my gym because one of my friends was sponsoring him for the visa. So he was working behind collecting garbages, and then he came to the gym because he said that he knows boxing, and he said that I have done boxing back home, and I started training with him, and his boxing was pretty good, like he was. And I was like, wow, and I said, do you know something called mixed martial art? He said, no. I said, I'm sorry, I can't take you where you want to go in boxing. That's not my field, that's not my industry, but I can help you transition into a new sport, which might be the biggest thing in Bahrain. At that time, it was starting, and he said, yeah, sure. What do I do? I said, do one thing, leave your job, come here, you stay in the gym, help me with the cleaning of the gym, help me with some boxing classes, and let's do it together. We're all having the same dream. We have Hamza, we have me, we have a boss. All of us, we're living the same dream. So let's all live in the gym and make it happen,
Amazing.
And yes, His Highness changed all those lives of those people. And if you hear the stories, there's multiple stories of athletes from Nepal, Makayev from UK, Abbas from Pakistan, and Mahbub is looking at that. And for him, he can look and say that I can be one of those stories. I can become a success story as well. And this time, there's no excuse. I can't talk about my training issues. I can't talk about not having the right sparring partners, not having the right coaches, not having the right platform. Everything is set for you. Do the only thing you have to worry about is training as hard as you can, capitalizing on every coach, every team member that you have, get as much knowledge from them as possible. And I think he's going to be the new breed that's going to be representing India. We've not seen that in India for a very long time. We've not seen athletes being able to do that, scouted from India and being able to get that non-stop support to live like an athlete's life. And we don't see that for athletes from anywhere around the world. Like if you look at Indian athletes that are competing in one championships or UFCs or Bellators or anywhere else, these are athletes that are going to gym, making their paying their membership fees, and getting that training done, and hopefully hoping that I could be training with the best one day. And a lot of people not giving a lot of importance to them because they're not the market that the top promotions are looking for. So when you have an American kid, a kid from Canada, or a kid from a market that is important for the promotion, you're always looking at these fighters. There's a lot of nuances, let's say, within this industry that allows a fighter to become where he is. But then there's one thing, like what we do, we say, forget everything, an athlete's life, go and do it. But why I mentioned win-win is only because he has everything set for him to become that face, to bring that change and become the new breed of athletes from India and represent India at the highest level. And he can do that today. Abbas is the biggest athlete in Pakistan, hands down. So Mahmood Khan can do that. But on the other hand, it's the fight business. It's mixed martial art. You never know what happens in the sport. And that's fine when I said win-win, because even if things don't go the way it is planned, things don't go his way, he's still going to be the image for the new generation to look up and say that if Mahbub Khan got the development contract, if he could secure a development agreement with Brave, if he could be considered as an important market, then all the thousands that are watching him right now is going to look and say that we can do that too. So the change has already started. There's going to be a lot of athletes that is looking at switching their mentality and saying that, okay, I should stop thinking about can I be a full-time MMA fighter? I should start thinking about it now, and it is possible. So he is going to do that. So it's a win-win for him as an individual, because he's going to be the face of that new hope for India. And that's something that we've seen Hamza Kohiji do that in Bahrain. That we're seeing today 19-year-old kids, 15-year-old kids, top level athletes in Bahrain. Unbelievable how good these kids are, because they believe that they can become a Hamza Kohiji. They believe that they can make a lifestyle with mixed martial art. They believe that there is something that can make their family and friends proud, and they think that they can build a legacy through the sport. So yeah, I think that's what Mahmood Khan is. It's the first in India, but I think this is going to be a starter. So it's a win-win for him. It's a win-win for everybody. It's win-win for India. They just need to back him, support him. That's the most important thing. And that's very important, because at the end of the day, for an athlete to travel, like I said, I know the story of traveling outside of your country and living in a country and going and fighting. It's not easy. It's not easy. And when you don't have anyone to look up to, like if you were in a country where sports is normal, you're always going to be like, oh, I want to be Mo Farah, I want to be Cristiano Ronaldo, I want to be, because these are people who have become something big from our country. But when you don't have somebody to look up to, like Mahbub in India, you don't have anybody to look up to and say that I want to be this guy, So you're always there, and you're always questioning yourself. You're always thinking, is it right? So the doubts always hit you. So the fan support, people backing him, and he's got a massive backing right now from his state of Telangana, his coaches, his teams. I've seen some huge support behind him, which is nice to see. And I think that he has to carry that positively rather than thinking of that as a pressure, that so many people are hoping from, things from me. Instead of that, take it as a positive energy. And that would be the message for me to Mahbub. If he can do that, if he can take the positive energy and know that I got everything I want here. Let me take that positive energy. Let me utilize every second that I'm here with the likes of Eldar Khans and Hamza Kohijis and Muhammad Makayevs and this Olympic champions and Olympic boxers and Olympic wrestlers all together training under one roof in the biggest camp. Let me utilize that. I think he's going to make something special happen, and I can't wait for him to turn pro from a promoter's mentality. But I'm not going to push him as much as he wants to fight in an amateur scene. I think that's a good thing. The more amateur fights you get, and the more you want to get your confidence and build a record there, it's always fine. There's no hurry of jumping into pro soon. But from a promoter's perspective, I want to have that talent in Brave competing and representing India, definitely.
Yeah. Seems like it's a great opportunity, Brave. It sounds like really good rags to riches opportunities that are going on. And in your position, there's no one better to be the president of the company because of the experience that you've got of being a fighter. There's a lot of promoters out there that have never fought in their life, right? Never had a fight in their life and don't know what a fighter goes through. Being there, having that experience, you know exactly how it feels like to go for it. I think that's a unique perspective coming from someone from top down, if that makes sense.
Oh, yes, definitely. I think that's where I always feel like the one question that helped me from being a fighter to being a promoter today was the idea that the promoters should be working for the fighters, should be working for the athletes. But here we make it look like the promoters are the bosses, which is not to blame anything, but I think it's a problem with the system, and which is why we as Brave Confederation is trying to change the system. Because even today, yes, I am the boss, when it comes to the position. If I don't want a fighter to fight, I don't want him to fight. If I want to sign a fighter, I can sign a fighter. And it shouldn't be in my hands to decide who signs, who doesn't sign, who should be getting the opportunity and not. I think that's where the problem with this organization is. But the moment we think that, we have this mentality that, listen, you want to fight, you want to get the big shot, you want to get on the big stage, then go and show me that you can sell the tickets. Go and show me that you can sell the pay-per-views. If that's my mentality, and the athletes are going to be more focused on something that is not fighting, and that's where today will be. Imagine the position that you have to be the strongest human being in the world. Bring anybody in front of me, bring a cricketer, bring a football athlete, bring anybody. I will beat him up. I could maybe with my two hands kill you and you would not be able to do anything about it, And that's how scary and how talented these athletes are with their minds and body and the skill level. They're so good at that. But you have to feel jealous about a guy who has 1 million subscribers on YouTube. Why? Because he would be able to get more paid doing your sport more than you. You're not relevant. Why? I can kill him. I could break his limbs if I want to. Doesn't matter. You have YouTube. The question I always ask is, if you had a son or a daughter who comes to you and says that I have a dream to become an MMA superstar, I want to be the Cristiano Ronaldo of MMA. Today, I have to tell them I have two choices. Either go to the gym, do what I've done, 100% dedication, sacrifice everything, go all in, 100% focus, or I tell them, start spending 8 hours a day on YouTube, stream, make content, go do that. Because 10 years, that guy's going and training day and night while you're doing for the next 10 years streaming, and your numbers are going to be more valuable than his punching power and his speed and his kicks. That's the sport we are in today, unfortunately. I don't like that. And I think that's where the problem is. And we think we should be looking at a place where we say, no, that's wrong. I understand the business side, I understand the money, but that's wrong. Money can come in. And that's why your business model is a disaster anyways in mixed martial arts. You have 7,000 MMA promotions in the world, 6,999 are failed business model. Why? Because it is not system. You're in the event business, not the sports business. Which is why we say Brave is not competing with other organizations, because they are those 7,000 promotions that has no idea what a business model is. They're living in this bubble of mixed martial art while we are in a different planet where we are sitting and saying, we're talking about the sports industry. We're talking about NFL, NBAs, and FIFAs. And we're trying to create a FIFA system where you have the CONCACAF, AFCONs, UAFAs, and AFCs. And under that, you have the La Ligas, Bundesliga, Serie A's, Premier Leagues. Then you have the teams under that where you're not going to sit and, as a Manchester United fan, you're not going to sit down and say that, oh, you know what? We've got KSI want to play in Manchester United. Okay, great. You got great followers. But the moment you're going to be playing against City, I don't care who you are. You sit far away from the bench. We love the numbers, we love the promotions, but you're not going to come anywhere near the pitch, right? Doesn't matter who you are, because it's much more bigger than numbers. And that's because you have the system allows. The system is sports structure, not an event structure. But in MMA, if that individual comes, that individual will be treated better than one of the biggest talents you have in your sport. And that's unfortunate, And I think that I think that needs to change. That's what Brave is working on. And I think that's something that I've realized becoming a fighter and to a promoter, that we have to look from that perspective of an athlete. And that's why we've been taking athletes from around the world. If you look at it, France and Ngannou started made
In
his big
France.
name here in Bahrain. You look at Gamza Chimaev, Mohammed Makayev, Ilya Tapuria, Ikram now, Johnny Walker, Stephen Lohman in Philippines. You look at every country, the biggest names from those countries actually came from Brave, and they didn't take more than
Wow.
6, 7 fights to be able to build that. Because I think it's a bold statement to make, but I think we can make superstars faster than UFC and any other promotion that's out there, because they can take superstars and do something big with them, make them mega stars for sure. But to make a star from when he's nothing and to build him at that fast pace in 5 to 6 fights, it's impossible. We've seen fighters like Khabib, 9 years undefeated, running through every opponent that's in front of him.
Yeah.
And he had to get that big corner fights and those fights to make him
To get his
what he
recognition.
is, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but 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 what about him being undefeated for 9 years? Walking through individuals. But that's the thing, So to do that, you have to travel around the world. The globalization impact comes from there. That you're going around the world, you're taking care of these athletes. And if you look at the scene, I mean, you have to watch that scene where Hamza Chimaev, first fight in India, nobody knew him around the world, but when he fought in
Yeah.
India, that fight that he won, he couldn't go into his bus afterwards. So the bus was waiting. The crowd went mental. They didn't know who Gamza Chimaev was. They didn't support him, or they didn't go crazy. They didn't mob. The crowd went crazy. There was a complete mob there. And it was not because of Gamza Chimaev is Gamza Chimaev. It's just because they saw this super talent, and a platform gave the opportunity to show this individual how crazy this talented guy is to a fans that loves the sport. And that was it. That was it. And that is a start to something big, and they saw him do something special and they loved it. And that fan base took him to where everybody wanted a piece of Gamza Chimaev, So that's the story. And I think those little things are what we do for fighters. Fighters might not even understand it. They think that, oh, why am I fighting in all these countries, But today, I think a lot of fighters like Amin Ayub and so on, guys who understands the business, really recognizes the value of what Brave is and what we've been doing for talent. So in terms of building the athletes and making them into superstars, I think we've been one of the best at doing that. In terms of globalizing and bringing a national structure to all the countries, it's evident that we've been doing that. In terms of supporting the International Federation for the sports development, nobody has done more development than us, So I think this is not motion; it is genuinely a vision. And in the next 5 years, we're going to change that complete switch and reform. The first word that I used. This is how we reform the sport of mixed martial art.
I've got to ask you two more questions because it's just come up, and it's mine. I've got to ask you, Francis Ngannou, and you mentioned him earlier. I didn't realize he made his debut he made his name in Bahrain. But when he did become available, did you try and go for him? Did you try and sign him?
Oh no, because this was before Brave as well, So it was a year before Brave. So we were on the process of building Brave. We're in the starting phases, and Francis was it was a guy we saw how it was unbelievable. Just a human specimen, right? Like this guy was unbelievable. Just to watch him, stay next to him, see his power and his punches. But again, the key point where everybody was following was his opponent. He was a Brazilian jungle fight heavyweight champion. I even forgot what his name is, but that was the guy that was supposed to be signing for UFC and the big promotions. That was a guy, and Francis was someone we met, and I saw the quality of this guy. I saw his fights, and I was like, this is something else, and suddenly when I saw Francis and I saw his power and his punches, that fight just became 10 times cooler because it was supposed to be this one individual who's supposed to be the biggest draw. Everybody's looking at him, and he's going to win another fight and go into doing bigger things. But then when I saw Francis, I was like, this fight is really, really interesting. And I remember behind in the backstage, Francis was hitting pads, and you could literally hear the noise of him hitting the pads backstage. And his opponent was so relaxed that he was wearing shades and sleeping in his locker room. And he was like, it's okay, when it's 5 minutes before the fight, call me. then you saw Francis do for what he does, right? And that hammer of punches, that was unbelievable, and that just changed how, and to annihilate an individual that is supposed to be the one that everybody's looking for as the next heavyweight draw in MMA, to do that to him, I mean, instantly, I think everybody we immediately there must have been 5 to 10 different promotions that was jumping on him. But we didn't have
Mm.
Brave at that time, so we didn't really look into it. And again, for us, definitely the key point is the picture of we're not. I don't really involve in what happens to fighters in terms of somebody coming to sign them. Yes, there's a building process we keep for them, but we know that in 5 fights, 6 fights, what we could make them build them into and what they would become, because that's part of our case study of creating a structure that can make athletes into superstars, because that is crucial for MMA promotions. It's not the social media numbers. There are promotions that has the biggest social media numbers in the world, and they take some of the biggest stars from US, and those stars are forgotten. They take some of the best athletes from US who are proven athletes, and they're forgotten. So what happens to your social media numbers then? If you can't really build stars, well, what's the point? I would rather not have that and use that for the development of sports. So yeah, our focus is the global ecosystem of mixed martial art, and that's going to be one day you're going to see in 5 years' time, and that's why I was saying it's not far away. Before we said it's 10 years
Yeah.
when we started
Yeah.
Brave, but now it's 5 years. We're 5 years close to hitting that, and you will see a change in the sport that we've not seen in the past decades. That kind of a complete change in sports industry. So when you see football change to what it is, that's what we say. What Coca-Cola was to FIFA and what Nike was to Jordan is what Brave is to mixed martial art, and that
Mm.
massive change is going to come in, and the business model. How big, how big mixed martial art is. When you bring the right business model, you have the fastest growing sport in the world, fastest valuation growth sport in the world, and you have a business model that is the most successful business model in the world. You combine them together, the result is that you're going to have the most lucrative sports investment opportunity the world has ever seen. That is what we've built. All this business, we talk about pay-per-views, we're talking about how much UFC is making, how much that event is making, how much gate. None of that matters anymore. We're going to create the most lucrative sports investment opportunity, and it is
Mm.
literally at this stage Bitcoin at $1, and that's how I say it. And investors can now look at that and say, "Wow, if this sport has shown a great exit strategy with, excuse my French, shit business model, what would happen if that same sport that has shown that valuation growth and the growth opportunity in a proper sports business model that we understand what are the opportunity for the investors and what are the opportunities for its growth. It's unbelievable what it can do. And that will also, in a way, unite mixed martial art from this millions of promotions that's out there. And fighters are going around begging promoters to get a fight. There's promoters like managers just throwing money left, right, and center, trying to
Yeah.
get fighters. And then there's, it's just a mental thing. The industry is in the gold rush. It's like almost like gold
Yeah.
rush. It's a sports rush that mixed martial art is going through. But eventually, there is a time when investors are going to look and say, "What's going on in this sport?" Like there's something crazy going on. Every promoters and promotions are looking at raising funds, and then exiting, raising funds, exiting, and you could spend millions on athletes today and make big noises today when you're raising big funds, but you have to understand that's not a sustainable business model. It's not a sustainable business model. You can't see that business model, because in the end of the day, you have to create the business model through sports, and you have to have the sports grassroots development, grassroots infrastructure. You don't have it. You don't have that. What happens if you lose your Mike Tyson and Muhammad Ali's? We will use influencers. We will use uh, YouTubers. Yeah, and you will survive. So you don't really have a plan to sustain a sports structure,
Sport. Yeah.
which is your product. It's like saying that I'm going to start a jewelry, while in 2 years we're going to run out of gold. And you'd ask me for investment for 10 years. I'm like, does that sound stupid? You're like, oh, but we're never going to run out of athletes. You're going to run out of superstars. You don't care about athletes. If you cared about athletes, you wouldn't need YouTubers. You're going to run out of
That's true.
superstars.
Yeah, boxing's very individual sport, isn't it? It's all about yourself. I want to touch base on boxing just really quickly. I have to ask you. I've seen that you are looking to launch into boxing. It's been quite a while. We've not heard anything. Give us some
Yes.
news, man. What's going on, Mohammed? What's going
Uh,
on in boxing scene?
See, for as cage sports, you look at different sports now. We are into wrestling, we're into football. We have already, if you look at Bahrain, we've invested in football club like Paris FC in France, Cordoba CF in Spain. So we have a cage racing team for a flat race for horses. They're doing amazing. So we're diversified to different sports. Of course, combat sports is different. Wrestling, jiu-jitsu, we have cage wrestling, cage jiu-jitsu. They're more on medals focus. It's teams, national team taking them. It's athlete focus. You can't build a sports business around it. Boxing, you had the opportunity to build a sports business property around it. But it's a reality check for us as well that we decided that, you know what, let's look at the amateur side. And that's when I realized how good we are at what we're doing in mixed martial art, because we're lucky that mixed martial art is a young sport and we can change mixed martial art today. If it's another 25, 30 years more, we will become like boxing. You cannot change it. It's that becomes the business model. Even today, we almost feel like this is the MMA business model. You know, if I come and tell you, no, we're going to make it like La Liga, Bundesliga, Premier League, going to have the league structure like IPL. It's going to be governed by governing bodies and confederations, which is under FIFA structure, and you're going to be in the Olympics, and it's going to be country versus country. You know, you won't believe it right now. You'll be like, that's not, yeah, that sounds nice, but I don't think you can do it because in MMA, you can't make it happen. It's individual sport. And a lot of questions come in because we haven't tried it. So in boxing, imagine it's 100 plus years old and you're looking at the pro side and you're looking at the professional side of boxing and you're like, unfortunately, it is an industry that I don't think it's going to be, anybody's going to be able to fix it very soon. It's too fragmented. It is too systemized in a way that is comfortable for the promoters that's working around. So I still see the purity in the amateur boxing. And I think that is going to be the one we should stick to. So we do have our boxing team. Hopefully we're going to be qualifying to the Olympics for Paris 2024. We've already qualified to the last Olympics. We had a boxer from the first ever Olympic boxer from Bahrain last Olympics, but this Olympic as well, we're looking at that. So that's the strategy I'm going forward to, because I think it's like going and trying to start a new Premier League outside of the FA in UK. You know, it must be stupid to do that. You know, you're not going to be part of the Champions League. You're not going to be part of the global system. So their system, although completely flawed, is there. And I think that it's a shame that the sport that I really, really love, you know, like from mixed martial art, yes, I have to learn grappling, I have to learn wrestling, but there's no better satisfaction than doing a 50-minute round of boxing, you know, just go an hour of just sparring. It's unbelievable how good that is. So it's something that I really love. And I think that sports, you know, needs to change, but it's also a lesson. I always say that boxing is a big brother. You know, we learn from our big brother, the good and the bad and the ugly of the sports side, and we should learn from that and implement that in MMA to not make the same mistakes. But the direction that mixed martial is going today is going almost looking like they're going into that same direction where they're going to make that mistake. Not at that level because it's much more fragmented. We still have promotions that will still benefit from exit strategies and IPOs, which they are doing. So that's a good side. In the business side, it's not so bad. The business is not going to be affected so much. But on a long run, yes, yeah, there's only going to be room for so many, and there needs to be a change in the business model, the structure. There needs to be stronger governance. Without that, I think we will end up like boxing, and we will be having the same conversation what we're having with boxing about MMA in 30 years' time.
Yeah, I think so. Mohammed, thank you very much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure to learn more about yourself, Brave MMA, about what's going on. You've got so much great stuff going on. And I really look forward to seeing the growth of what's going on. We should do this again sometime because I feel like we can talk for another hour.
We could go on. I always say that when we speak about mixed martial art, I could go on for hours and hours.
I could tell.
And my team is that's why, you know, they always worry about, okay, what are the questions? Let's talk about the questions. Let's talk about things, because they know that if you just let him go, we're going to go on for hours. Because and that's the thing for me. That's the only thing I know. If you ask me about cars or if you ask me about technology, I will have nothing to say. But the moment you talk to me about mixed martial art, that's the only thing.
Come alive.
Yes,
alive.
I know
that feeling.
Can go on forever, man. So, but thank you for having me. We should do this again, and we have a massive event, the season ending event for the year in December in Bahrain. If you